Hello, I'm Donald Leggett and welcome to this edition of Share Views brought to you by the financial website London South East. Our guest today is Colin Hutchinson, Chief Executive of Ascent Resources, the AIM-listed operator of the Petisovci gas field in Slovenia, and he's here to give us feedback from yesterday's investor conference call. Welcome, Colin.
Hi, Donald.
What was the mood yesterday on the conference call?
I think the mood was positive. I think we about 100 people dialed into the call, so we had a lot of interest, and hopefully we were able to say some positive things about the permitting situation in Slovenia and about the prospects for the strategic review.
And what broadly were people interested in? What were the main body of questions about?
The questions really broke down. I think the most questions were about the strategic review and the pace of the process and the number of interested parties and when we thought it was going to come to a conclusion. There's some other questions then about permitting, because we've had some news recently and some feedback from ARSO about when we might expect to get this IPPC permit and some of the other permit that we're looking for in the wells. And then there were some operational questions about well performance, but the bulk of the questions I think were about the strategic review and permitting.
So what's the latest on the strategic review, and what were you telling the conference call?
Well, the strategic review, it's been ongoing since middle of April. We've had over 20 companies have signed
4 months in.
4 months in. So the companies that are still involved in the process have done their detailed due diligence work, and we're hopefully, I think Clive said yesterday, we're closer to the end than the beginning. I thought that was the case a few months ago, but I think now we've been through a long due diligence process with a number of companies, so hopefully we are close to coming up with a positive conclusion.
And what is stopping companies going with that final step, saying yes?
There's a lot of detailed information in the data room, a lot of technical information and a lot of legal information to break down. And technically, people can go through and do their analysis on the seismic and the well performance, come up with a view on the technical side. On the legal side, it's the permitting is the biggest issue that we end up talking to people about, and the uncertainty around when we'll get permits to build a processing plant or stimulate new wells. So permitting is the largest issue that people are focused on.
It's slightly baffling because Slovenia actually imports all their natural gas from Russia. ARSO, the Slovenian Environmental Agency, know this full well. So why would they be dragging their heels to have a source of natural gas from Slovenia? It doesn't make a lot of sense.
It is frustrating how long the process has taken, particularly this last phase of the process, which has been since we got the favourable court decision in November. These final amendments and tinkering to make sure everything is as it should be on the application. And my frustration has just been the number of amendments we've got. So we got the first set of amendments, we answered them, and then we got some more and some more. That's why we got so frustrated, and you sort of wondered whether they're ever going to come up with a decision. There was a meeting last week where they were very positive to a member of the British Chamber of Commerce who's been quite supportive in helping us chase permits. So we understand that now these are the last set of amendments that we're going to have to deal with. Once we submit them and they're submitted properly, then they'll come up with a decision, and that decision hopefully should be by the end of September. So we're nearly there. I don't think it's them deliberately dragging their heels. I think ARSO are understaffed and overworked, and they also need to make sure that this is quite a visible project. It's quite high profile, and they want to make sure that everything is done as it should be. So okay. I don't think it's
and the very latest from ARSO?
So at this meeting last week, which was the head of the British Chamber of Commerce, some officials from the Environment Ministry and from ARSO who are dealing with the case, and they discussed this permit and the other permit. And the feedback was, once we submit everything that we need to submit, and we'll have that done by the early September, then they'll make a decision, and that should hopefully be by the end of September.
Okay. To what extent is the permitting issue getting in the way of you and your negotiations around Petisovci?
I think it certainly isn't helpful that the permitting has dragged on the way it has. Now, having said that, there are some of the parties in the process for whom permitting is less important than others. Some take a longer term view that the permits will arrive eventually. And
which they will.
Which they will, yeah. So for companies that are able to take a longer term view and are used to working in these sort of environments where permits do take a long time, and they do take a long time in quite a lot, particularly in Europe, it takes a long time to get permits to do things.
Africa comes to mind.
Yeah, so experienced oil and gas operators can take a longer term view on these things. So permitting, if the permits arrive tomorrow, it would help, but the process can come to a conclusion with or without the permits.
Okay. And it's 4 months. You started off with 20 companies. How many companies are still in?
I think there's a handful of companies left in the process. There's some who are more serious than others, we think, who have done more due diligence and we've had more conversations with. So there are companies that haven't withdrawn from the process but are maybe sitting watching, maybe waiting for a permit to come through, or waiting to see what the outcome is. So
it's like poker.
Yeah, we're waiting for someone to show their hand, and then hopefully we can bring it to.
Can you still see a successful outcome?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I still believe that we've got a great project. Production from PG10 has been good. PG11A has obviously been a bit of a disappointment, but we've got sort of significant gas resources in the ground. We've got all the infrastructure in place to sell the gas to the Croatians, and I think there's a good project there for someone who has the funds to take it forward into the next phase.
To what extent is further stimulation the solution for the following gas production?
It's certainly the solution for, well, short term there are other things that can be done before you need to re-stimulate the wells. On PG11A, there should be a way to reduce the amount of water. It would require a well intervention. It's not something we're going to take on with our current cash resources, but it's certainly something that a new partner in the strategic review might seek to do: isolate the water, shut it off, and then get dry gas flowing from PG11A.
So PG11A is not dead and gone?
Oh no,
just
it's not written off by any stretch of the imagination. I think it is recoverable. We attempted to intervene to fix things back in March, weren't successful, but I think if you had the resources you'd need, and were able to do so, then it's something that someone in the strategic review might take on. We could prolong the life of PG10 by using compression equipment, but ultimately PG10 will be probably the first candidate for the re-stimulation once the permits are in place. Currently it's been producing on the F sand. We'll recomplete it up in the E sand and it should produce gas for a long time to come.
What have the financial implications been of the delays?
Well, what we've done is we've tried to reduce costs as much as possible. We've still got revenues coming in Slovenia, 160,000 of gas revenues last month. That will cover the day-to-day costs in Slovenia.
Euros or pounds?
Euros. But in order to give ourselves the maximum amount of time to conclude the strategic review and to get permits and to document and complete everything, we've cut costs as much as possible at the PLC level. So directors have reduced salaries, and we've sort of cut anything that's non-essential. So anything that's not specifically required for the PLC or to prolong production has been cut.
It does feel quite drastic though, Colin. You going part-time.
Yeah, I think it had to be done. We had to reduce costs as much as possible. By going part-time, I'm still focused completely on the job with Ascent, and that was one of the undertakings we had to give the Nomad, that I'm always available and always working on Ascent. The reality is that because we're no longer sort of planning future business development with Ascent, we're no longer looking at new acquisitions, no longer looking at sort of the future field development plan. It's really just focused on this strategic review and the permitting, that it can all be accomplished on a part-time basis.
Okay. And what should we expect in terms of news flow? What's going to be kicking the share price over the next few months?
News flow, we're expecting a permit to come through based on what ARSO said, and we're expecting something to come out of the strategic review. So hopefully over the next short while we should have some positive news flow on both.
Okay. Colin Hutchinson, thank you very much for joining us. And that's it for now. Thanks to Colin for joining us. And if you found this interview useful, please subscribe by Googling London South East YouTube. Thank you.